It's 3 a.m. You're lying in bed. Your eyes are open. Your mind is racing through a conversation from 6 years ago that nobody else remembers. You assume something is wrong with you, but the real answer is far stranger. Your ancestors were almost never asleep at 3 a.m. either. Not because they had insomnia, because their bodies were built to wake up. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that a full night's sleep means one long unbroken block of unconsciousness. 8 hours down, lights off, nothing in between. If you wake up in the middle of the night, you call it broken sleep. You call it a problem to fix. But for most of human history, that single unbroken block was the unusual pattern, not the normal one. Think about that for a second. What did the people who came before electricity, before mattresses, before locked doors, actually do in the dark hours when their eyes popped open and their brains switched on? Did they toss and turn, cursing their bodies the way you do? Or did they know something you've forgotten? Historian Roger Ekirch spent over a decade digging through diaries, court records, medical texts, and folklore from pre-industrial Europe. He wasn't looking for sleep patterns at first. He stumbled onto something odd. Reference after reference to first sleep and second sleep. Not as rare events, as routine, expected parts of the night. People went to bed shortly after dark, slept for a few hours, woke up naturally somewhere around midnight, stayed awake for an hour or two, and then fell into a second sleep until morning. This wasn't insomnia. This was the schedule. During that waking window between the two sleeps, people didn't panic. They didn't reach for anything to knock themselves back out. They prayed. They talked quietly with a partner in the dark. They tended a low fire. Some got up and visited neighbors who were also awake because everyone's body was running on the same rhythm. Some had sex. Some just lay there, thinking, in a relaxed and unhurried state that Ekirch describes as closer to meditation than to distress. Here's the part that should stop you. This two-phase sleep pattern wasn't unique to one culture or one century. It shows up in ancient Greek and Roman texts. It shows up in African tribal accounts. It shows up in colonial American records. Different continents, different centuries, same pattern. Which raises a question. What if this wasn't a habit humans developed? What if it's a default your body still carries, buried under a few hundred years of artificial light? To test that idea, psychiatrist Thomas Weir ran an experiment in the 1990s that reads almost like science fiction. He took a group of volunteers and put them in a room with no artificial light for 14 hours a day, mimicking the long, dark winter nights our ancestors would have experienced before candles and street lamps. No clocks, no devices, just darkness, for 2 weeks straight. By the fourth week, something happened. The subject's sleep split, on its own, without anyone telling them to. They fell into a pattern of sleeping for about 4 hours, waking for 1 to 3 hours in a calm, quiet, almost meditative state, and then sleeping again for another 4 hours. Nobody taught them this. Their bodies simply reverted to it the moment the modern world's light pollution was removed. Your body still knows how to do this, it just never gets the chance. So why did it disappear? The answer isn't medical, it's economic. Historians point to the arrival of cheap, reliable artificial light in the late 1800s as the turning point. Gas lamps, then electric bulbs, extended the useful day and compressed the night. Factories needed workers alert on a schedule. Sleep stopped being something your body negotiated with the darkness and became something squeezed into a fixed block between two alarm clocks. Somewhere in that shift, the very idea of a natural nighttime waking became pathologized. A normal biological event got a label, a complaint, something to medicate away, which means that 3 a.m. moment you dread might not be a malfunction at all. It might be the oldest, most ordinary thing your brain does. But here's where it gets more interesting than just a historical curiosity. Neuroscientists studying sleep architecture today have found that the human sleep cycle naturally moves through lighter and deeper stages roughly every 90 minutes, and that a brief awakening between cycles is completely normal, even in modern sleepers. Most people simply don't remember it, because the awakening is short and the room is familiar and dark. It's when that natural awakening stretches longer and your mind starts sprinting through worries instead of settling into stillness that the experience becomes uncomfortable. The waking itself isn't the enemy. What you do with it is. Which brings back Ekirch's research in a different light. The people who slept in two segments weren't just biologically different from you. They had cultural permission to be awake in the dark. Nobody told them something was wrong with them. There was no glowing rectangle promising to fix it, no pressure to fall back asleep in under 20 minutes or fail at rest. The waking hour had a name, a purpose, even a kind of intimacy. What if the discomfort you feel at 3 a.m. isn't really about being awake? What if it's about being awake and believing you shouldn't be? There's a psychological term for what happens next in a lot of modern sleepers. Sleep researchers call it conditioned arousal. The bed itself becomes associated with anxiety instead of rest, because every time you wake in the night, your brain starts a countdown of dread. You check the time. You do the math on how many hours are left. Your heart rate climbs. The very thing your ancestors treated as a quiet, expected hour becomes, for you, a crisis. Compare that to Wehr's experimental subjects, who described their waking hour as peaceful. Some called it the most relaxed they'd felt in years. Without a clock to check, without a reason to be anywhere, the waking period stopped being a problem and became something closer to rest itself. A different kind of stillness, not unconsciousness, but not stress either. So what would it look like to reclaim even a fraction of that? Not necessarily to split your sleep on purpose. Most modern lives don't allow for a leisurely hour of candlelit conversation at midnight. But maybe the deeper lesson isn't about the schedule. It's about the relationship. Your ancestors weren't fighting the dark hours. They were living inside them. There's a quieter thread here too, one that anthropologists studying small-scale societies have picked up on. In several hunter-gatherer communities studied by sleep researcher Jerome Siegel and colleagues, adults without access to electricity slept for roughly 6.5 hours a night on average, often less than typical modern sleepers assume they need, and rarely reported insomnia as a concept at all. Not because their sleep was perfect, because their relationship to wakefulness in the dark wasn't loaded with judgment. Waking at night wasn't failure. It was just night. That reframes the whole modern obsession with 8 uninterrupted hours. The number itself may be less important than the meaning you attach to the moments you're not asleep. Somewhere in the last 150 years, humans didn't just change when they slept. They changed how they felt about not sleeping. Think about your own last stretch of 3 a.m. wakefulness. What did you do? Chances are you looked at a screen. That blue light delayed your body's return to sleep even further, and the content itself, whatever it was, activated the same racing, problem-solving parts of your brain that once scanned for predators in the dark. Your ancestors' waking hour was slow and dim. Yours is often lit up and stimulating, which might be the single biggest reason it feels so much worse. None of this means you should get up and reorganize your closet or answer emails when you wake at 3 a.m. But it might mean the wave of anxiety that hits the moment you check the clock isn't a fixed biological fact. It's a learned response, layered on top of a rhythm your body has been running since long before clocks existed at all. So tonight, when you wake up and the room is dark and quiet, and your mind starts doing that familiar sprint through the day's leftover thoughts, consider a different story than the one you've been telling yourself. You are not broken. You are not failing at rest. You are, for a few minutes, doing something your ancestors did every single night of their lives, in the exact same darkness, for the exact same reason. It's 3 a.m. You're lying in bed. Your eyes are open. And for the first time, maybe that isn't the problem. Maybe it's the most human thing you'll do all day.